So format is a final step. You have now pretty much finished revising all the technical contents and the language areas. But before you submitting your manuscript to anywhere, even to your university for a thesis deposit, you need to pay very close attention to the format. It is part of the editorial job. Different journals have different format. Even your university have a template for your thesis. But if you do not have that kind of guide, then you can use what I introduced in this section. Your appearance really matters. So imagine you go to a job interview, right? You don't want to go to the interview with the shorts. You want to dress as nice as possible. Similar here, you write an article you believe is a very useful, valuable to the community or to your profession, but you want to present it in a nice way. Other people like it. Okay, so that is how important the final formatting matters. Okay, it matters. It is the last step, but it matters just as important as the rest of the writing process. Okay, follow the publisher's guideline, if any. Otherwise, you use the guideline I'm going to present. Title. Well, that sounds like easy, but if you look at many drafts, even in the published articles, there are sometimes errors. No-brainer, first one. Initial letter of major words, initial of the last words, long prepositions with 5 or more letters. They are prepositions, but they still should be capitalized, such as this one, between, since, until, after. You do not capitalize articles, coordinating conjunction, and short prepositions. Spell out the words whenever it is possible. I'm going to show you one example. What is F and S? You know it, but the readers don't. There is a capital one, while these are lower cases. Recording clinical grade, you can see the problem here. This should be capitalized. This is not clear. And this is the upper arm that should be capitalized. So I correct it like that. You don't have to capitalize the letter G because it's a hyphenated word. It is one word. Body text has many rules. For example, you want to have a justification of margins, line spacing, typeface, type size, font size, and capitalization, words and phrases with non-English rules specifying items. First, it is a personal preference. If you want to be eccentric, that's fine. We respect eccentricity in academics. However, your article is not for yourself. You write an article for other people. You want to think how other people like. So most people use left or fully adjusted. The fully adjusted would look like a formal, polished, important. But the left adjusted have some advantages. To avoid uneven, it's easy to process for software. You do use the center alignment, but not for the body text, rather for visuals and equations. For example, this is the left, this is the full adjusted, this is the center. You can see the difference. Line spacing, I do use 1.5. Okay, you may use a double line, but that's for manuscript. It is easy for draft and editing, but not for the final. However, you can adjust the line space to make sure some documents fit onto one page. You don't have like a loner, we call it a loner, so basically one sentence left on the next page. Even read through the entire document, make sure all the headings, subheadings are located in the middle or on the top, not for the bottom. Do not separate a visual copy. Careful with that. Example, this is the 2 lines. And that's what I just wrote, but it is the 1 point line. You see the difference. If you compare with 0.8, this is the compressed, so it's not very comfortable. It's a visual clutter, even something like this. Okay, but if you have a little bit of space in between, you wouldn't have this problem. See the difference? It matters to the impression rather than the technical part. I prefer not to use double space. Character spacing, usually you use normal spacing, right? But sometimes you condense for more room to write more words. You do it occasionally to make, but if you stretch it, you can expansion. For example, the word it end up with them, right? Them is here. Typeface and type sizes. Typeface, if you have a flyer like this, it looks nice with different color, but we are working on the technical writing. We don't need to be fancy. Just use very simple ones. Consistent. Consistent is a key. Variant is allowed to achieve emphasis and contrast. However, do not use it too often. Type size usually is 12. Sometimes you use 11. And you can usually a larger for headings and smaller for headers and footers. Avoid typeface. These are the wrong ones, okay? For example, you have no idea what this is. It looks funny. This takes a lot of space. This is readable, but it's childish. This in technical writing, you use typeface like all this. Technical mistakes are like a mismatch of type size or typeface. For example, this is a real example, and it is written by a master student in the American university. Of course, the student is an international student. This is the body, right? So soundly up, soundly down. Oh, this is the equation error as well. I'm going to mention that later. Okay. Capitalization. Remember, you want to capitalize everything on list. Just pay attention to the capitalization. Sometimes you do not have to capitalize if the word is enclosed by dashes, brackets, and parentheses. The word immediately after colon and semicolon, seasons, if they are used as a season, and the planet or astronomical bodies like Earth, Sun, Moon, and the like. I'm going to give you the example now. Say, for example, something in the bracket. The reason is this thing in the parentheses becomes part of the sentence. You see, there is only one period. There is no period here. Okay, that's why you want to use a lowercase. Move on, but the colon, if you have a colon, you must use lowercase. And another one is heading east. East is not address or somewhere, it's part of the normal words. Capitonium, they have different typeface. Okay, when you have an uppercase or capitalized or lowercase. For example, we use March. If a capitalized, it means the month. If lowercase, it means to walk long distance. Okay, that's what the capitoniums means. So be careful with those words. Italicize. Very often, students forget to do that, except for etc. A lot of people use non-italicized, etc. But by rule, you must italicize these words. Why? Because they are not English. Okay, so people can understand that. For example, in at all, when you write this reference, they must be italicized. Okay, you may use a verse. Okay, but vice versa, no abbreviation, but you still need to italicize. We see this a lot already, but I just summarize all this on one page. Another time you need to italicize when you specify, for example, the word italicize, which means you are talking about the word means italicize, okay? Means to use italics, okay? For example, the initial I. Formatting headings, be consistent. I'm going to show you an example. If this is the first level, usually you go lower and lower, smaller and smaller in font size. Occasionally, you see center-aligned headings, but most of the time, it is flush to the left margin. Do not indent. Use more numericals for lower. Okay. Say, for example, it is 1, later on 1.1, 1. Okay. Use more capital letters. Only one here. Okay. You may use different fonts, but it must be the same font for the same level. And you change type for different levels. Once I point them out, you will pay attention at least. Anyway, I'll give you an example. I say contrast. You see the contrast, right? Two levels. You see the contrast. Improve the emphasis and the clarity. Okay? Make sure you have the same typeface for same level. You have more numericals for the lowercase if you use numericals. More capital letters in the higher levels. You reduce the capitalization in the lower levels. New typeface and smaller fonts for the lower one. Bolded face at the higher one. Okay, not the other way. You don't want to have a bold at the lower one, but unbold for the higher level. All headings flush to the left. Don't for heading format. No heading at the bottom of any page. That's where you can adjust the lines or move paragraphs to fit onto the next page or the same page. Don't indent the first paragraph. This is something you may not realize. I will show you the example. Keep this in mind. Do not suppress or compress. Heading the date. Okay, a full date follows preposition on. So when you have exact date, it should be on some date. If it's in the month, it is in the month. However, date varies depending on the country. I would say in China, we know that 2020, right? That's how we write. We do not have a comma in between, but in Canada, for the same date, we have 31st July 2020 or 31st 7 2020. So that's in Canada. But if you're in the United States, you already saw the example. It's July 31st 2020 or 7 31st 2020. So you have a different format. As an international writer for international readers, you want to change from your own culture to adapt to the other international community. I'm going to give you the examples. In the United States, it says that. In Canada, it's different. Do not write dates like this. You understand it, but not the readers. The right one, clear. Just try to be clear, spell out the month. Numbers, when you write 0 to 10, just use words, unless they are used for other purposes. If it's for general purpose, for example, 2 books, 3 books, write out. Already mentioned this, use a comma. I'm going to move on. Always use numbers and formulas in equation with decimals. That's no doubt, right? You don't want to say 3.14, right? Give you an example. This is the informal. This should be words. I have published 3 using words, 10. Why? This is wrong in English writing. Sometimes I use incorrect. You can say 400, or you can revise this year, then 400. Okay. If you have 2 numbers standing side by side, it creates confusion. When you have this kind of scenario, you always revise. Either one would help. Occasionally, you may have to use this, okay, just to make sure it's clear to avoid confusion. Numbers. For example, this is incorrect, and this is also incorrect. Figure 3, you should use the full letter at the beginning. I'm not in between the sentence. This is wrong. Okay, because studies is not a unit. Formatting list is a part of the paragraph. You use list in longer documents. Why? Because when you have a long document, you have enough room. Usually there's no page limit. When you have a list, make sure the entries in the list follow the parallel structure and the same format. Usually begin with a capital letter or capitalize the first words. The sentences should end with a period. Not if it's not a sentence, you don't have to do that. Don't end items with a comma or semicolon. For example, I have a bullet point. A right what? B then comma. No, this is wrong. Okay. Do not have this one. unless it's a sentence. Unless it's a sentence. Do not use and or for the last item. It happens a lot. For example, a lot of people write this one. This is the then E, another list, C. Then it says and this one is not needed. Why? Because they are lists. They are not sentences. If it's a sentence, you're going to have it. But if it's a list, they are in parallel. For many units, you try to use international, we call it SI unit in writing, unless it is specified as a British unit, but which is less often right now. The following grammatical rules of units are generally applicable internationally. Leave one space between the measurement and the unit. A lot of people write this way. For example, 5 meter, 6 kilogram. No, you need to leave a space in between. It should be 5 meter, 6 kilogram. There is one space in between. Okay, unless it is a percentage. For example, 40%. Sometimes there is a capital letter KP. If you write KP, this is wrong. It must be KP. Why? Because that PA stands for Pascal. These are the units named by people's name of the well-known scientists. Okay, so for example, ampere. Ampere is a scientist, so you use A. What I use here is I already showed you Pascal here. Okay, another one is Kelvin. This one is very confusing if you use this one, which means kilo, right? Kilo something, kilometer, kilogram, all those things. Okay, but sometimes you may have this capitalized units, but for the other units, never capitalize them. Okay, only capitalize the one with people's name. Do not add S to the unit. Visuals stand out of the document. When you have a figure, it will see it right away. Check, ensure that all visuals are center aligned. Table, schematic diagram, or the photos, everything should be centered. Okay. And they appear right after their first explanation. So when you have a figure in one paragraph, then figures follow that paragraph right away. You may explain it after the figure. How you format your figures is personal. If you have a table which is longer than one page, you need to redo it on the next page. Again, I'm going to show you the example to describe this. Say this is a table published in this journal article. You have a table 3, summarize all this. This is a table number. This is a caption title. Okay, you have this. So when the paper is published, there's a lot more. Okay, a very long table. It cannot fit in one page. So the editor somehow put it on the next page. So table 3 continued. You don't have to write a title. Table 3 continued. And then on the same next page, you keep all the headings for this one. Although there is only one element left. Equations. You do not have a table of equations. You do not do that, but you number them. Always use Arabic number. Okay. This sounds simple, but a typical mistake is you do not use symbols. Okay, I'm going to show you one example. This is the positive example. This is the good. Okay, so you use all the symbols. Sometimes use Arabic numbers. This is coefficient. Okay, and you flush to the right with the number dent. Then you can explain the symbols in the table, a list of symbols, or follow this one. If you have a long equation that cannot fit on one line, you change at the operational sign, but flush to the right. You do not label here or here, you number on the top row. To remind you, in some journal, they consider this equation as a part of the sentence. They may add a punctuation, something like that, either comma or period. But in engineering writing, it is not required. These are the incorrect ones. Why? Because they are words, right? You do not use words in the equation. This is exactly showing. This is exactly what it shows in the thesis. Formatting references and in-text citation. Which format should you use? Again, you follow the publisher's requirements. Whatever you choose, it must be consistent. Reference, similar style, very exhausting work. I would suggest you read my book or other books about formatting, or use some examples to follow that. I highlight this one. This is what I do. If you use a number, you add a number here, or you alphabetically, this is alphabetically in the order of years. Okay, if it's a book, you italicize it, but you do not italicize journal article title. You italicize the journal title. Where do you put the year? It's up to you, unless the publisher tells you. In-text citation, you may have parenthetical citation and a narrative citation. Narrative citation means the name et al. Become part of the sentence. For example, Dolan et al. Reported, right? Figure is written by Lee et al. However, if you put in the bracket, it's not part of this, is the parenthetical. There are recommended styles. Appendices, you don't need appendices for journal article. Index. Anyway, at the end of the day, you must ask your co-author, make sure they know what you wrote, what you're going to submit. Next one is proofreading. Okay, you got to be patient and proofread very carefully. Okay, I'll give you one example. For example, original, almost the final draft, I wrote, consult with your superior. Then when my proofreader get back to me, she said, you do not need a with. Permission to use in your work, she add them permission to use them in the work. Clarity is essential. Is it 2 or 4? The essential to engineering publication, essential for engineering publication. Okay, but this is obvious. More that's a typo, because a typo, obvious, a proofreader can pick it up for you, which is nice. Okay. Again, now we come back. Before your submission, you must make sure it's plagiarism free. Remember this website, you can check your writing.